Imagine this. You're at a luxury hotel, enjoying the finest things life has to offer, when a young maid comes in to clean. You make fun of her, mock her appearance, and treat her like she's invisible. But what if, in that very moment, the person you just belittled had the power to completely turn your world upside down? Welcome to the channel. If you love stories that will leave you thinking, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more amazing content. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The hotel stood tall and elegant, an epitome of luxury. Marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers hanging from high ceilings. The lobby buzzed with sophisticated guests, each dressed in designer suits and dresses, chatting effortlessly as they sipped champagne or checked in at the front desk. Every inch of this place spoke of wealth. Gilded accents, fine artwork, and the scent of fresh flowers filling the air. It was a world of extravagance, where only the privileged seemed to matter. Amidst all this opulence, there was a young maid. Dressed in a simple, neat uniform, she quietly moved through the hotel's hallways. Her job was to clean the rooms, keep the floors spotless, and make sure everything was in perfect order. She didn't stand out, and yet, in her presence, there was something different, an unspoken strength in her humility. She worked without complaint, always with a quiet grace, though the world around her overlooked her completely. She moved through the hotel like a shadow, unnoticed by most of the guests. To them, she was just part of the background, an invisible figure, here to clean up after the mess they left behind. She wasn't meant to be seen or heard. Her presence, often overlooked, was simply a part of the luxury that surrounded them. Guests passed her without a second glance. They didn't know her name, didn't care to know. To them, she was just another worker, nothing more, nothing less. She wasn't important enough to be acknowledged, only to be given orders and treated as if she existed only to serve. But despite how she was seen, she held her head high, doing her job with pride and dignity. She never complained, never showed signs of frustration. She simply worked, quietly, efficiently, with a calm grace that few could understand. She was, after all, just a maid. At least, that's how they saw her. Then, the guests arrived. The air shifted the moment they stepped through the doors. They were the kind of people who never had to wait in line, who never worried about the little things. Their clothes sparkled with luxury, tailored suits, diamond-studded watches, and heels that clicked with authority against the marble floors. They spoke loudly, as if the entire hotel was their private stage, their words dripping with entitlement. They treated the staff like they were invisible, ordering drinks without a word of thanks, tossing a tip only when it was convenient, as if kindness was an afterthought. They didn't care about anyone but themselves. The world, in their eyes, revolved around their comfort and their status. Every glance they threw was a silent judgment, a reminder to everyone around them of their position, superior, unapproachable, untouchable. They walked past the young maid without a second thought, ignoring her existence, believing she was just another part of the hotel's background, there to serve their needs and never question their demands. The guests' treatment of the young maid was nothing short of degrading. As she entered their lavish suite, carrying her cleaning supplies, they barely acknowledged her presence. One of the guests, a man with a smug smile, pointed toward a spilled drink on the floor. "Clean that up, will you?" he sneered, not even making eye contact. His voice was sharp, as if she was just a servant whose sole purpose was to deal with their mess. Another woman, dressed in a bright, expensive dress, looked her up and down with disdain. "Really?" she scoffed. "You should have worn something nicer. You're in a place like this, not a janitor's closet." The woman's laughter was cold, cruel. The young maid didn't flinch. She simply nodded, going about her work, wiping up the spilled drink without a word. But each insult stung. They saw her as nothing more than an object, someone to be ordered around, someone who didn't deserve to be treated with basic decency. A third guest, a man sitting by the window, waved his hand dismissively as if she were an inconvenience. "Hurry up," he muttered. "We're trying to enjoy our time here. We don't have all day." He didn't even look up from his phone. Through it all, the maid remained silent, her face betraying nothing. She had heard it all before, and yet something in her quiet demeanor spoke volumes. She didn't need to say a word. Her grace under pressure was louder than any of their insults. The moment the maid stepped further into the room, the mocking began. One guest, a tall woman with sharp features, looked her up and down with a smirk. "Is that really the uniform you're supposed to wear here?" she laughed. "It looks like you just walked out of a thrift store." Her voice was dripping with condescension, and the others joined in, chuckling like they were sharing an inside joke. Another man, lounging in a plush chair, raised an eyebrow and waved his hand dismissively. "Honestly," he scoffed, "do you even know what it means to work in a place like this? You should be wearing something more presentable. Maybe then you'd actually fit in." The maid's uniform, simple, neat, yet plain, became the subject of their ridicule. They laughed at her appearance, treating her like she was less than human. "You're lucky you even have a job at all," the woman continued, her voice full of judgment. "Someone like you doesn't belong in a place like this." Then, without a moment's hesitation, the man gestured at the empty glasses and scattered napkins. "Clean up that mess," he ordered, as if she were nothing more than an object to be commanded. "And don't take all day. We're paying for this luxury, remember?" The maid, without saying a word, bent down and began to tidy up, her movements fluid and efficient. But inside, the weight of their words hit her. She didn't let it show, though. Her face remained calm, her posture straight, because deep down, she knew something they didn't. Despite the harsh words, the maid remained a picture of calm and humility. As the insults flew, she didn't flinch. Her hands, steady and precise, continued their work, wiping down the table, picking up the napkins, and quietly moving around the room. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. Her eyes remained focused on the task at hand, as though nothing could break her composure. Each mocking remark rolled off her like water on glass. She wasn't bothered by their cruelty, nor did she show any sign of frustration. It was as if she understood something they didn't, the power of silence, the strength of patience. Her expression was soft, her posture graceful. Even in the face of their degradation, she stood tall. She wasn't just cleaning a room. She was holding on to her dignity, quietly refusing to let their words affect her. She didn't need to defend herself. Her quiet grace spoke louder than anything they could say. As the guests continued to mock and belittle the young maid, the door to the suite swung open. The hotel manager, a man with an air of authority and composure, stepped into the room. He paused for a moment, surveying the scene before him. His sharp eyes immediately noticed the tension in the air, the uncomfortable silence that followed each cruel remark. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, his gaze flickering between the guests and the maid. The guests, oblivious to what was about to unfold, didn't even glance at him as they continued their taunting. The manager, however, had seen enough. Without raising his voice, he calmly addressed the room. "That's enough," he said, his tone firm but controlled. He turned to the guests, his gaze piercing. "What's going on here?" The manager's voice cut through the tension in the room like a knife. He glanced at the young maid, then back at the guests. The silence that followed was thick with anticipation. Everyone in the room could feel that something was about to change. With a calm, almost amused smile, the manager spoke again. "You see, the woman you've been mocking, the one you've been belittling, she's not just a maid." The guests froze, their laughter dying on their lips. They looked at the manager, confused and unsure. The woman, the maid, continued her work without a word, her face still serene. The manager let the words sink in. "She's the daughter of the owner of this hotel chain." A stunned silence fell over the room. The guests' faces went pale as the reality of the situation began to set in. "She's been working undercover," the manager continued, "observing both the staff and the guests. And as you've just seen, she's taken note of your behavior." The air in the room became heavy with shock and disbelief. The guests exchanged nervous glances, now fully aware of the mistake they had just made. But the maid? She simply smiled softly, her calm demeanor never faltering. The room fell into absolute silence. The guests, who had once been so full of arrogance and self-assurance, now stood frozen. Their eyes widened. Their mouths slowly fell open as the weight of the manager's words sank in. The woman who had mocked the maid's uniform looked as if she had just swallowed something bitter. Her face flushed with embarrassment, and for a moment she couldn't find the words to speak. The smug smile that had once played on her lips was now gone, replaced by a look of pure shock. The man who had waved her off dismissively dropped his phone, his hand trembling as it hovered over the glass of champagne. His eyes darted from the maid to the manager, his face turning a deep shade of red. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. The others in the room were no better. Some stared at the maid in disbelief, while others avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable. The sense of superiority they had carried just moments ago had been shattered in an instant. It was as if the ground had shifted beneath them. They had mocked, belittled, and treated her as if she were beneath them. And now they realized they had just humiliated the wrong person. The realization hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Their faces showed the regret they couldn't yet voice. They had crossed a line they couldn't undo. The silence that had filled the room was now broken by stammering voices, each guest attempting to justify their behavior. The woman, her face now pale, was the first to speak. I didn't know, she stammered, her voice shaky. I mean, you were just cleaning and I didn't think. Her words faltered, and she quickly stopped herself, realizing nothing she could say would make up for what had just happened. The man who had been so dismissive earlier cleared his throat, his voice tight with nervousness. Look, I didn't mean anything by it, he began, attempting to sound casual but failing miserably. I didn't realize who you were. I thought you were just, well, one of the staff. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. You know how it is, right? We're just used to people like you being invisible. The others, clearly feeling the weight of the situation, began to chime in, their voices full of forced sympathy. I'm so sorry, one woman said, her eyes darting between the maid and the manager. We never meant to insult you. It's just, we didn't know. They all spoke in unison, their words now tumbling out in a desperate attempt to undo the damage. But it was too late. The maid's calm gaze, her quiet grace, had already shown them the truth. Apologies, no matter how many they offered, couldn't erase the disrespect they had shown her. Still, they tried, each one nervously offering excuses, hoping for forgiveness, but none of their words could take back what had been done. As the guests stood there, fumbling over their words, the maid simply looked at them. No anger, no bitterness, just a quiet, unwavering strength. She knew, as we all should, that respect isn't earned based on title, wealth, or appearance. It's something everyone deserves, no matter who they are or what role they play in life. The maid in that moment wasn't just a cleaner, a worker, or someone to be dismissed. She was a reminder to us all. The truth is, kindness costs nothing, and yet, it has the power to change everything. The guests had learned that the hard way, but it was a lesson that would stay with them long after they left the hotel. So, next time you meet someone, no matter their job, their background, or their status, remember this story. Treat them with respect, not because of who they are, but because of who you are. After all, you never know when the person you look down upon might be the one who holds the key to your future. Respect costs nothing, but it shows everything about who you are. In a world that often values status and wealth above all else, it's easy to forget that kindness and respect are the true measures of character. This story serves as a powerful reminder that no matter someone's role or appearance, they deserve to be treated with dignity. So, take a moment to reflect on your actions. The way you treat others speaks volumes about who you are as a person. Let's all strive to be the kind of people who lift others up, not put them down. Share this story to remind others of the power of kindness and how it can change everything.